Okay, we are live.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the regularly scheduled council meeting for the Mahone Bay Town Council. We have most of our council members here tonight, along with some staff and some people who are joining us on the YouTube transmission. At the end of the meeting, at the end of the regular agenda, we will have an opportunity for those who may be watching from home to ask questions about anything that was discussed in tonight's meeting. So we'll begin the actual meeting by acknowledging that we are gathered tonight in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral, present, and future territory of the Mi'kmaq people. Today we gather with the intent followed by the living peace and friendship treaties, and we do so with respect, cooperation, and coexistence. And we're thankful for that. Council, you have an agenda that was emailed to you. What is your wish on the agenda?
Mayor, based on the outcome of the March 26th strategy and planning meeting, I move that we move item 4.1 to and reclassify it under section 5. And as well, I'd recommend we move item 6.3 to either the the May 26th council meeting, or if deemed time sensitive, a special meeting later on in the month.
Okay,
With that, those two amendments, I'd move that we accept the agenda.
so that was moved, the solar garden, to the next regularly scheduled meeting or a special, and move item 4.1 to the correspondence for information.
Yes.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Now, you've heard the motion and the amendments on the question. Councillor Carver.
I would like to have a repetition of the suggestion about the change for item 6.3.
6.3, the solar grading issue, unless it is urgent, if the CAO felt that there's work that is to be done that should be done post haste, then we would accommodate this at the next meeting, at which time the correspondence that was received today could be entered into the discussion.
I mean, I guess my motion is specifically to item 6.3 without regard to the other items, but
Okay.
Obviously they're aligned.
Okay.
So,
CAO, is it something that you feel,
My understanding that it can wait till the regular meeting on the 26th.
okay? Councillor Carver,
Thank you.
okay? Okay, anything further on the question? All in favor? Motion is carried. 6.3 goes to the 26th of May, and 4.1 goes to information. Okay, let's go to the minutes of the special meeting of April 26th. Councillor Feeney?
Mayor, they looked at to be in good order. I move that we accept the minutes of April 26, 2022.
Thank you. Councillor Carver seconds. On the question. All in favor? Motion's carried. Let's go to the minutes of the regular council meeting on April the 28th. Councillor Carver?
Move that the minutes of April 28th be accepted as circulated.
Thank you. Councillor Wilson? Seconded. On the question? All in favor? Motion is carried. Let's go to yet another special meeting on May the 2nd. Councillor
I
Feeney?
move that we accept them as presented.
Thank you. Councillor Carver seconds.
I'll second it with the proviso that we have clarification about Councillor Burdick being both absent and present.
We have sorted that out, and I'm sorry, I thought I had updated those minutes in the package. My apologies. That's
Okay.
been sorted out.
She was absent, I believe, on the second.
Yes, she was. And
Okay.
the motion was to go into closed session was,
You do have it corrected, though.
yeah, I do, oh, okay, perfect. Yeah,
I haven't.
Okay. On the question, all in favor, motion is carried. Let's go to the special meeting of the 3rd of May. Councilor Sweeney moves, Councilor Wilson seconds. On the question, all in favor? The motion is carried. Thank you. There are no presentations this evening. Let's go to the correspondence on the action items.
Mayor, with regard to 4.2, I think we've discussed that in a previous meeting, and the Heritage Advisory Committee has taken up this mantle. So I believe Glenn's note did have influence, and that is going to be explored, and there'll be report back to council at a later date to speak specifically to this item.
From the Heritage Advisory
Yes.
Committee, okay, thank you. And finally,
Can I just
4.3,
say further to
I'm
that?
sorry,
Oh, I just want, so if Mr. Patcha or anybody else is watching, I just want to say further to that, lower down on this agenda is the report from Strategy and Policy Committee recommending an amendment to the town strategic plan in reference specifically to this concern as well. So I just wanted to note that as well. Council has heard it in a few capacities.
thank you, Mr. Hyde. Councilor Cowan?
Will a letter be sent to Mr. Patcha to that effect? In response to his letter to us?
Do you want to make a motion that we do that?
It always strikes me as a bit redundant to have to make a motion on this. But yes, I would make a motion that a response be sent to Mr. Patcha, acknowledging his letter and explaining its disposition of the issue.
Deputy Mayor seconds. Okay, you've heard the motion. All in favor? Motion's carried. Perhaps you might consider at some point at the Policy and Strategy Committee, a motion to have a standard process. If somebody writes to council and it's an action item, that we, as a matter of course, like you said, it seems strange we have to have a motion every time, but just that we would write back and say, thank you for your interest, here's what's happening. Even if it means it's only passed on to another entity. Okay, 4.3, Tom Ernst. Request to fly the German flag.
Mayor, I think we all understand and respect Mr. Ernst's contributions to the ongoing desire for the significant contributions of foreign Protestants to be well recognized. As you know, in 2019, in our centennial package, we certainly had a project that would updated the town's interpretation of the town's founding families. You see that in front of the bank. As well, we've had significant installations at the Mahone Bay Museum. And of course, in the area, we have very significant interpretive sites and the large monument with the installation and the obelisks in Lunenburg. I guess the point is that the recognition of the significant contributions of the founding families from the 1750s is in abundance. As you know, while we have a flag policy in the manner of national flags, it's really formed around customs and etiquette and our historical practice. And to that point, it hasn't been our nation's practice to fly foreign countries' flags, and certainly not within the order of precedence. Unless it's a situation like a foreign dignitary is visiting or a G7 summit or so and so forth. So although we have individuals who would fly a Ukrainian flag this week on their personal property, or maybe an American flag on the 4th of July, or maybe even an Irish flag on St. Patrick's Day, it hasn't been our country's convention to fly foreign flags on our flagpoles. As well, with regard to the German flag, as you know, there have been 8 or 9 flags since 1947 that have been German flags, and I think this specifically on this item, it's around promotion and ongoing acknowledgement of the contributions of the foreign Protestants. And therefore, we'd also have French flags, we'd have Swiss flags. There's a number of countries in, 2022's Europe that really forms the foundation of where those books came from. So I'm not in favor of flying the German flag on the flagpole, but I am in favor of continued support for the museum and other organizations who have that mandate.
Okay, Councillor Carver.
I tend to agree with the spirit of Councillor Feedy's remarks. At first, I thought no, for all those reasons. But then I looked at the flag policy and realized that the request meets all that you can check mark all, most of the points in our flag policy. And I think the piece that would help me be able to say yes would be if it were a flag that represented the Lunenburg County German Canadian Cultural Association, rather than a national flag of a different country. That, for me, that would be much more resonant for use here, and particularly in the context of the province having made a declaration of the importance of the month. Like, it's the German heritage has been recognized by the province. At this point, I would say no, if this were put to a vote. But I would have said yes if it were a flag of the Lunenburg County German Canadian Cultural Association.
Do they have a flag?
I don't know, but maybe they'll get one.
Okay, I've never heard it mentioned. Does our flag policy, clerk, specifically, does it not, or does it fail to mention any issue around national flags, flags of other countries?
I have to double check about, I believe there's something about visiting dignitaries, but I'm not sure if that's in our most recent policy or if that's in the one that was replaced by our most recent one. So I have to double check that, Your Worship. I can find it.
Okay, thank you. This happens in June. What would the options be in the policy?
Well, for right now, we have already received and approved a request to fly the pride flag for the month of June.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure what is the, when you say what are our options in the policy.
Well, like, if you were to go away from this meeting and review the policy and come back to the next meeting and say, we can't fly the flag of another nationality, that closes the issue. But if it doesn't say that, well, we would also know if there's going to be a a cultural flag as for Lunenburg County, as Councillor Carver suggested. We would know if there's one of those or not. Mr. Hyde?
So I don't believe the current policy explicitly prohibits the flying of national flags. We had a discussion at Policy and Strategy Committee recently, and direction was provided to staff to come back with some potential revisions to that policy. And that included the consideration of maybe additional flagpoles to ensure that the national or provincial or First Nations
First
flags were
Nations
covered.
flag, yeah.
So I don't think there's anything precluding it, but I also think that it's reasonable at this time for council to say, we have not determined how to handle this type of a request. We are reviewing the policy
Okay,
and take it under advisement if that's council's wish.
Deputy Mayor?
So I guess similar to my shared sentiments, I would be wary of flying flag. But I think something that I wanted to mention is, so when we started the meeting, we did a land acknowledgement that speaks to First Nations, and I think there's some elements of these particular requests that, from my perspective, would fly in the face of that acknowledgement. And so, in many ways, when we make that acknowledgement, then our decisions need to reflect that we truly realize what that means. And in the spirit of reconciliation, I don't think flying the flag would be a good thing to do.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, Councillor Wilson.
Probably can't find it again, but I think that 4A precludes flying the flag of another nation by saying this flag pole will be designated for groups and organizations, not countries.
So it would support Councillor Carver's notion
Yeah.
around the cultural flag,
Sure.
but not the national flag.
I think that's the point.
Okay,
I think honestly, Mayor, that's a good boundary. I think that's all we're really saying. I mean, any cultural group that wanted to have a flag flown, we would give it due consideration. I do think a request to fly a national flag outside of the context of a visiting dignitary or a political event like visiting of the Queen of England or, the Pope or something, other than that, I think we would tend to not do that. Even in Ottawa, they have very strict rules, but anyway.
okay. Well, we have a motion on the table.
No.
Oh, I thought we did. No. Okay. So does anyone like to move a motion? Or not? Councillor Wilson.
Like to I move that we receive and file the correspondence from 4.3.
Okay. Seconded by the deputy mayor. Councillor Carver.
And did that motion include writing a letter to Mr. Ernst to explain? the
That would be
decision?
an amendment. If you make that as an amendment,
I would like to suggest that as a friendly.
Okay.
amendment.
How friendly can we get?
okay,
Fair enough.
you've heard the motion along with the amendment. All in favor? I'm opposed, motion is passed. Okay, let's go to our correspondence for information items.
I move that we receive and file section 5, number 5.1, 5.2, and item 4.1.
Okay. Motion to move and file, seconded by Councillor Carver, or
I'm seconding and a
Question.
and a question.
Yep.
Do we need to have these Monday memos listed in our correspondence information items at all, given that we received them all independently, separately from this, but unless it's there for the information of the public?
I think it makes it a matter of record for the council meeting, so the public can refer.
Not at the council meetings, it's information that council is receiving.
Yes, not necessarily intended for their use per se.
Just information.
Yeah.
Okay, I was just questioning in terms of shortening or sometimes lengthening. Yes.
I'm getting an echo somewhere. I don't know where it is. Everybody's muted. Okay, so motion on the table to receive and file. All in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you. Let's go to staff reports. This is the first report of the month. The new and improved and abridged version of the report. Mr. Hyde, please.
Well, as you say, Mr. Mayor, this is a shortened version. It just includes the part that is updated on the first meeting of each month. If any members of the public want to, you can look back on the package from last meeting for the full report. But as it stands, that section that has been left in there is tasked aside by council and provides the status of various motions of council, including motions that we write letters of thanks and all the other ones. So if anyone has any questions in that regard, don't hesitate to ask. And Mr. Mayor, I think your speakers might need to be muted. Maybe that's the issue.
I thought they were turned right off.
So if I may, even though this is a shortened version of the usual report, seeing it this way actually in a way highlighted the amount of the vast number of activities and assignments that staff have received and are working on. It's very impressive and kind of vicariously exhausting. So, but that by which is a way of saying kudos to staff for all the work that they do.
No?
How many items are there? There's 30.
I wanted to say thank you for that, but I also wanted to acknowledge that this, one of the reasons we began this was to allow us to show that we hadn't let anything fall off our plate. Now it also shows generally, month to month, a lot of things are still there. And I want to acknowledge that while staff are obviously working hard on all of these things, we made this list in order to ensure nothing does fall off the plate. So occasionally we have to shift resources around and some of these items don't move forward as quickly as we might hope, and I'll revise the target date on there. But our intention in keeping them on there is, as compared to past years, is to make sure that we are working towards every single thing council has asked us to do. So thanks for the understanding when occasionally an item has to be dropped down due to staff putting energy in other areas.
Councillor now.
Could I ask a question that's not particularly related to this here? It's just related to, I want to find out where our responsibility lies, referring to the cemeteries. I was back in Park Cemetery on Sunday, and there's a lot of tombstones that are upset. So I'm just wondering whose responsibility that falls under. Because there's a lot of
Do you
them
think
that
these
tipped
are
over.
new relative to, like you've noticed them tipped over recently, or you just?
Well, this was on the weekend, I noticed.
But I just mean that, do you think that they happened recently, or do you just mean the overall number of them?
There's a lot of them that are tipped over. I don't know when this would have happened or.
We
if it was
do
natural
follow up
things
with
or-
the owners that we are able to reach out to, like mostly the issue sometimes will be if we can't get a contact from the owners, so sometimes that does happen. But that usually these are ones that if they're not a bunch of new ones, if they are, I'll certainly want to follow up on it. But we typically take some time to make contact with the owners and establish what they want to do about it.
I believe there's a cemetery committee meeting on the 20th.
Yeah.
The
It just
20th,
came
but this, historically, the companies that set the tombstones have, lifetime guarantees, which sometimes are enforceable, sometimes not, depending on vintage. But usually there's an allocation, Richard, of to do some of that resetting work annually within reason. I know historically we haven't had a lot of problems with Park Cemetery because the tombstones are kind of set with more modern rigor compared to Bayview. But I do know in Lunenburg they have recently had quite a bit of vandalism within the cemetery, and I'm hoping that is not the case, and this is more
Well, I hope
of
so,
cross
too.
thieves as well.
Just need to be an ordinary number of tombstones that were
Mhm,
tipped over.
I'll talk to
Maybe.
them.
fair enough.
We can maybe add that to the agenda for the meeting on the.
That's a good idea.
20th.
Thanks, Richard, for that. That's a good idea.
Kurt?
This is something actually the CAO doesn't even know yet. It's between meetings today. It's not even up to date on this, but staff received a letter in the mail today. And I don't really want to share a lot of information because this is going out on YouTube. But this person is a very young person and sent in a handwritten letter and said that they were visiting from a different part of Canada. And when they were visiting in Mahone Bay, they were in the cemetery with their family. They leaned on a tombstone and the tombstone broke. And we got a very sincere letter of apology with some cash to fix the tombstone. So I just, I thought that was really special that somebody did that. And again, I stress how very young this person is. And they sent that in, we just got it today.
Which cemetery was it, Park or? Yeah.
Yeah. There's no return address, there's nothing. So somebody thought ahead so that we could not send
If we
anything back.
could change the names to protect the innocent, I think that's something that we need to publicize.
Mhm.
That someone took the responsibility for an accidental situation and took the time to try and write it, RIGHT it, right?
And yes.
So Mayor, I think we'll ensure that this item gets discussed at the cemetery commission meeting on the 20th, and there'll be a report back to council after that. Richard, thank you for that.
Councillor Carter.
Apropos of the Councillor Now's original question, how do I deal with this concern? What I've done several times is take a picture, if you have your phone with you, take a picture and send it to the CAO and say, I've noticed this, and I've noticed that with graffiti and done that. And for anybody out there who's listening, I'd suggest to do the same if you see something that's a concern. Well, sorry about that. And another one was a dangerous sidewalk situation.
Over there. You had that picture on, didn't you? of
It
the-
was, it was a corner of Maple and Fairmont,
Okay, the pavement.
where the asphalt had been really cut away by the snowplows.
Clerk?
Further to Councillor Councillor Carver's comments, for anyone watching this video, the faster route would actually be to email it to inquiries@townofmahone and that's the email address that's on everybody's utility bills. And that's the fastest route to get it to staff so that it can be routed to whoever the correct staff person is.
And also the report button on
Yes.
on the front page of the town website.
Yes.
Both of those avoided getting held up by me for
Oh.
24 hours or so.
Sorry about that, Mr. CAO.
No, it'll get where it's going. We'll just get there faster from the front desk.
Anybody there?
Yeah, just on a different matter, I'm curious about the water line that's been replaced to south nursing home. Do we have wastewater lines that run the same course?
Yeah, there are wastewater lines just serving the facility of the treatment facility itself, and then the one home at the top of the hill.
And are they being replaced in this or not?
They're not being replaced at this time, and they're not, because they just serve the one facility, they're not transmission lines like the other lines being done.
Okay. Anything else? No?
Mayor, move that we accept the staff report.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Now. You've heard the motion. On the question, all in favor? Motion is carried. Let's go to 6.2, the staff report on the CAO performance review policy. This is a deferral. I think this actually began back in September before the new council was elected in 2020. The very first mention of it that I can find, I think it was Councillor Carver's motion. Anyway. Councillor Carver.
I'm happy to move that council approve the CAO performance review policy as presented. Do I have to say amended or just as presented?
I think it's as presented May 10th for clarity.
As presented May 10th.
There you go. Okay, do we have a seconder? Councillor Wilson seconds. On the question. All in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you. Let's go to the solar garden has been deferred to the 26th. Let's go to the staff report on grants to organizations. Is that you?
Yes.
That's you, okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So obviously, this is a little bit of a deviation from our standard process, because normally we would be with our manager of finance, we would be into the budget process about this time. But generally, it is the expectation of organizations that apply before March 31st to the town's grants to organizations program that they will hear back at approximately this time in May, typically when the budget would have been passed, with regards to the status of their applications. And because we have delayed the budget process till July to accommodate hiring a new manager of finance and getting them on board, this piece is being proposed to be moved forward independently of the budget. Whatever the accepted grant amount is here, and whether council chooses to set an amount higher than that, will be reflected in the budget when those documents are presented. But any answers council is willing to provide, any acceptance that council is willing to grant to the applications that were received before the deadline tonight will enable those organizations to move forward with their plans on that basis. So we're requesting council's approval here. You'll note there isn't a recommended highlighted motion here, and that's just because I didn't want to presuppose council's willingness to approve these applications, but the total number of applications received is generally consistent with prior years in both the amounts and number of applications. There are a couple that were not received this year, and in some cases they're not typically received at all, but we have granted them funding in the past. So I tried to provide notes to that effect on the report, but if there are any questions for me, I'm happy to answer them. Council did also separately receive the application package itself.
Councillor Carter.
Thank you. I'm interested to see the St. Vincent de Paul Society here. Is this the first time that they've appeared on our grants request list?
To my knowledge, at least in the last 4 years.
Yeah.
No, they were appearing on our grants request list, prior to that.
Oh, have they? I don't remember them at all.
Okay.
Yeah.
Heritage Boatyard Co-op. This is unspecified.
I didn't see they described the project that they're working on in their application, but I didn't see a specific requested amount in the application.
Hmm.
So
And
council
no
would have
mention
to-
of the Schooner Race Week that they're hosting this summer?
It may have, I'm just gonna try to, I don't have the application open
Okay.
in front of me. I'll open it.
Well, it's not there, it's not there. Okay, anyone else have a question for the CAO on the grants?
Mayor, I know it's been our practice to have a March 31st deadline. I'm assuming that when we finalize the grants and the grants budget, it's going to be able to accommodate these and any last minute scratchers like Baybu, the school Baybu's, they usually have an application with the school board. I think the school usually asks for at least two different projects.
Yes.
So plus or minus another $500 or so, Mayor, I would say.
But have we not
reasonable.
specifically written to the school to remind them that any such requests should be submitted before the 31st of March?
I believe we have.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think we've done our part. I think we just shouldn't be surprised if
it's late.
a request does show up
Yeah.
inevitably.
They tend to get preoccupied.
Anyway, we can deal with that in the budget process, Mayor.
Just to, I believe the motion was, at that time, was to reach out to anyone who had applied in the past year or 2 years or something like that, and
Okay,
there is a possibility that, Baybu hasn't run for the last 2 years, so they may have been missed by that, I don't know, but there is a possibility that they were missed by that, because the event hasn't happened during the pandemic.
I think what the mayor is referencing is that when we have approved grants in the past that they didn't apply for, the motion of council was to send them a letter with the money that they didn't apply for,
Yes.
telling them that they need to apply the following year.
Yeah.
And I think that has happened a few times. Now, I don't know where it's an organization, if there's turnover, obviously that may interfere with the consistency there. It's not the same people necessarily putting that together.
It's also going from one school year to the other, so.
yeah. Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, well, I was just wondering, I think there was an email that Councilor Wilson sent around this piece. I'm wondering if going that route, from my perspective, might be the best way for us to deal with this rather than us approving these grants in the way it takes quite a long time. We don't have to spend that much time. If that's deemed possible tonight.
Well, partly related to that is the idea that we refer the flag policy, the grants policy to our policy and strategy committee and revise it. Because I liked Councillor Wilson's suggestion as a way of streamlining it, and I think that the Deputy Mayor's suggestion is a way of another way of trying to streamline it. So that I'd be happy to deal with what we've got on the table tonight.
So motion to approve what we have, but also to refer
Yes.
to policy and strategy, as the Deputy Mayor has suggested, that we have a look at the whole process.
Yeah.
Okay. Are you making that motion, Councillor?
Yes, I'd be happy to make that motion.
Okay. Seconded. Clerk, do you have the motion?
The motion that I have is the council approve the grant requests that have been received. I'd like to have a dollar amount, I think, for that.
$77,710.
So I'll jump in. That's the previous year's total. There are a couple that we'll have to assign a number to in order to approve them.
Right.
Yeah.
I'll say some of them were unspecified, so.
58.
And That can be done in discussion on this motion and then an amendment to the motion to reflect the amounts for the ones that didn't have a specified amount.
Yeah, because the motion is already underway.
Or, yeah, or we can withdraw the motion.
Let's just go through them there, in 2 minutes.
Okay,
As part of the discussion on the motion?
yeah,
Yeah.
Motion, yeah.
okay, let's do that. Health Services Foundation.
250. You could, Mayor, why don't you just, why don't you just read the numbers and.
Okay, let's go.
We'll allocate the money and.
Heritage Services Foundation, 250. Heritage Boatyard Co-op is unspecified. It was 500 last
500.
year. I would say we put the 500 out there and see what happens.
Mhm.
Founder Society, 250. Pro Kids, 500. I don't know if,
Can I just come, the Health Services Foundation number was their previous year. They haven't applied for anything. And they're not one that we have customary, like I put the non-request in order to indicate some of them are customarily granted no matter what. Obviously, that's the council's discretion. So the Health Services Foundation isn't one of those. We did grant them last time because they applied and we provided them some money.
okay,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Deputy Mayor, go ahead, please.
So my suggestion would be very different. Would be the ones that have numbers, let's approve that. And then when we change the policy, which we'll do, I hope we'll do, then the CEO can take that headache and deal with it when they apply.
That's a little bit different suggestion, but
I think.
Fair
so-
enough.
So right now, we're just assigning numbers.
we still have the motion on the table. Right, we moved and seconded. But the numbers that we'll go forward with are the numbers that are here as having been applied for.
Yes. That's my suggestion.
And if something comes up, and we're going to deal with that at the strategy and planning committee, priorities committee. If another one comes in, what we're suggesting, I think, is that we would have a flat line amount of money attached to the activity, and the CAO could apportion as he would see fit. But that's for the policy and strategy committee to make that recommendation back to council. For now, we're dealing with the numbers in the motion that are included here.
Sounds a friendly amendment.
Yep.
I accept the friendly amendment.
Okay, seconder, do you accept it? He's always ready for a friendly amendment.
I thought Councillor Wilson was the seconder on that one. For the,
No,
no,
Deputy Mayor and Councillor Carter,
apologies.
So just to clarify, we're not gonna do anything with the unspecified amounts tonight. Then.
no. Okay,
Yeah.
But are we going to assign an amount at the budget discussions? I'm just thinking that it might be,
Sorry, you keep talking, Penny. Deputy Mayor.
I'm just assuming that the budget discussion might happen prior to
the next policy.
the
and
next
strategy.
policy and strategy.
That can accommodate the issue?
Yeah.
So can I make a suggestion, Mr. Mayor?
Sure.
So there are 3 non-request numbers which total $1,000. If you go by the prior year, 250, 500, and 250. There's numbers that are already there by request, 2,060, 2,500, 900, 1,900, 1,000. There are other ones, Health Services Foundation, para hockey, which have not been reapplied for and haven't traditionally been ongoing. So if council is comfortable with the non-request numbers being filled in as per prior years, the numbers being requested being approved, there are 3 unspecified: Bonnie Farm, Heritage Boatyard Co-op, and First Responders Day. I don't know what, like, I guess my recommendation is we just talk about those 3 for a minute, and then we'd be done essentially.
Yeah. Sorry.
Well, we have a motion on the table.
Maybe clerk could read it back. I have no idea what it says.
Well, we have a partial motion that council approves the grant requests that have been received in the amount of, and that's what we were looking for,
Yeah,
and that the grant policy be referred to the policy and strategy committee. So we'd still need that number to complete the motion.
okay.
having made the initial motion, I would be happy to revise it to, in line with the CAO's suggestion. So using the actual figures in the 22-23 column that are there, and the unspecified ones using the figures in the 21-22 budget. Those for those three that are unspecified.
Deputy Mayor?
So philosophically, I find that very problematic, right? Because somebody hasn't applied and they're just giving them money. And they might not choose it, right? They haven't applied, they haven't indicated they want money. So we're just putting money away to them in particular, which means that if somebody else comes, that money is available for them, right? So what I was suggesting is we've already, in many ways, in principle, we're sort of thinking we'll spend X amount in terms of a grant. We already have 8360 that has already been requested. These we can approve and sort of say, well, we approve these. When we do our change in the policy, then we can say, well, our limit is 10,000. You'll only have, I think, 1640 to play with. CA will figure out how to play with that, with the request that will come in. And that, for me, removes arbitrariness in the process making, because we already, right now, we're just thinking, well, let Founder Society come 250 of a request. Why? What's the rationale for that?
Yeah. I agree with that. You have to apply. And if you don't apply by March 31st, we'll take it under advisement at a later date. I'm sure if the principal of Bayview phones and says, I forgot to put in my application, we'll review it in due course. But I do think that the idea of let's establish the budget at $10,000, have council direct staff to put that in as a line item in the budget process, and then let's allocate the first 8,600 to the deputy mayor's point and move along. And we still have 1,400 to allocate through between now and whenever.
So the amount there is 8360. So
8360, agreed.
I'm sorry, I have difficulty hearing the deputy mayor's voice down here.
Yeah.
And so there's that, and I'm also not clear. My suggestion, and what was in the revised motion, was to include the specific numbers that have been, and I don't know what the total is, the specific numbers for the 22-23 year.
That's 8360, Councillor Kirby.
The specified numbers.
$8,360, yes.
Plus 500 for the Heritage Boatyard, because they've submitted a request, but they have not specified an amount. Plus Bonnie Lee Farm, who, if I understand the list correctly, have submitted a request but have not specified the amount. Plus the First Responders Day, who have submitted a request with an unspecified amount. So we have an amount of $500 for the Heritage Boatyard, add that to the 8,300, and decide on some amount to give to Bonnie Farm and to the First Responders Day.
Just a suggestion, maybe where Bonnie Lee Farm and the First Responders Day never specified amounts, maybe specified to them 250 each. That makes it an even thousand on top of what's already specified.
Fair enough.
Is that fair?
9,300, $60.
9,360.
Less than 10.
Fair enough. I mean, that strikes me as a very reasonable approach.
So we would have sufficient funds to address the amounts requested, plus 500 for the Heritage Boatyard, 500 for Bonnie Lee Farms, and 500 for the First Responders.
250.
For 250 each,
For each.
yes, or 500 for total.
Yes, yes, that was the intent of my motion to do.
Okay.
That's what.
So,
You okay with that, Well?
I think so.
are ye clear over there in the corner?
That council approves the grant requests that have been received in the amount of $9,360, and that the grants to organizations policy be referred to the Policy and Strategy Committee.
Councillor Carver,
Excellent.
Deputy Mayor,
Second,
Second, okay. You've heard, yes.
Sorry, that all sounds great. I appreciate everybody putting the numbers in there like I had suggested. I just want to raise that we will not receive a request, or we have never received a request from the Pro Kids program. That was a grant that council elected to provide. So just being clear then, if we don't elect to provide it, we won't provide 2022-23. I just want to be clear that was one that the council has actually never received a request for, but based on council's own consideration, decided to contribute to last year. So I just wanted to be clear on that.
All right, Councilor
One
Carver.
more comment, and this is to help me not forget. The idea of making some of these that are actually annual requests, and we feel committed, like to the school. And would we make that a line item every year, that we give a certain amount to the school? That's to be part of the policy and strategy.
Yeah, I think that.
Yeah, policy discussion.
As I said.
Yeah. Oh, good point.
So if it help me not forget.
Okay. On the motion, all in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you. The updated council meeting schedule. Wow. Monday through Thursday, every week, with specials on Friday and Saturday mornings. That's the way it goes.
Sunny's off.
Look at September.
Well, if you have to.
Unbelievable.
Pretty upset. wasn't it?
It really is becoming a very busy agenda. And what you don't see here are all of the other meetings that are happening outside of town hall, outside of the council chamber, that members are involved in. Yep.
And I think with the exception of one of these recurring meetings, I attend every single one.
Yeah.
Yeah, your kid doesn't want to know you anymore.
Everyone goes home and Bogdan says, who's that? Yeah. Okay,
Now we're sufficiently depressed. What should we do with this, Mayor? Are we looking to approve this meeting schedule?
Just for
or
information.
Just for
Fair enough.
information. Be very thankful.
Mhm.
Little thank you note in the mail to the clerk. Great coloring job on the calendar. Councilor Carter.
I would like to say, in all seriousness, that we cannot have any more new committees because we're running out of colors.
There you go.
Oh, no.
That's good. And I'm just noticing that August is empty. I said August is empty.
Regularly scheduled meetings.
Ah, the specials.
Mhm.
You should have little star blades that go for the special meeting. I noticed on the website, the discussion around the boundary discussions, that persons can go to the town's website and see the discussion on the role of the council, the job that the councillor does. I hope this calendar is part of that presentation for the public to see.
Your worship, everybody around this table will know that that is the first thing, the first conversation I have with anyone when they come in and say, I'd like to know what it would be like if I decided to run for council.
There you go.
I bring out the calendar and I say, but it's not only the red squares and it's not only the squares that show up here.
Yeah. Okay, good enough. Thank you for the update. Councilor Kerr.
Thank you. Will there be new hard copies of this printed, or are we just going to make?
So we're not part printing another bunch of hard copies for public distribution. If a member of council's after a hard copy, and imagine that could be arranged. We usually try to do things digitally, but
The ones that we send out is about $1 each. And
Ah.
then we mail them and that sort of thing, so. And this is the third time this calendar has changed in the last 2 months, so,
the current one will be on the website.
yes.
Okay.
Tallies gets new ink,
That's right, yeah.
colored ink for the computer.
Indeed. Okay. There endeth the staff reports. Let's go to the council items. 7.1 is respective of our representative volunteer. This is when council will choose from the persons who have been nominated, who council feels that typifies and embodies all that is visible in the volunteers in our town. And I think all of council recognize where this town would be, or rather where it would not be, if we didn't have the volunteers. And in all the organizations, the town organizations, and all the others as well. So I think, clerk, we all have a
Yes.
ballot.
You all have a ballot that has 2 names, and just put a check beside whoever your vote is for, and when everyone's ready, I'll come around and pick them up.
Okay,
Are those blocks indicative of anything? Because there's blocks at the front, and blocks behind, and blocks in the middle. So we just put it right by the name?
Sure.
We know who's gonna have the hanging cat on their ballot.
You guys, I don't think I should vote since my wife did run on nominations.
okay, that's your choice, thank you.
You're allowed to, in an election, you vote for yourself, right?
Yeah, but you're not, this falls squarely into the area of vested interest. Because
He feels compelled.
Nay, driven. There you go.
Well, your worship, if I may, while the vote is being counted, I would like to suggest that we post a list of recent, or even, I don't know, as many volunteers as we can over the past years. I think people would be interested to know who has been nominated and who has.
Just their name, no affiliation
There could
or,
be affiliation too, yeah, but they might not be. And people might not know that groups are eligible to be nominated. I think that's correct. But I think it would be interesting to see. I mean, I'm interested to in other council, other municipal websites to see list of volunteers over the years.
something that perhaps staff can consider, because you're going to end up with the list,
Sure.
right?
Just go back to a certain period in time and say these are who our representative
Yeah.
volunteers have been over the last however many years.
Who-
1919.
Who's the
1920.
longest engaged volunteer that we have in town right now?
I can't even imagine how you
No,
begin to.
I don't know, but something to think about.
Well, on that note, your worship, the town of Mahone Bay's 2022 representative volunteer is known to volunteer with a lot of activities with children in tow,
Mhm.
and Karen Muldoon.
Okay, excellent. Congratulations to Ms.
Mr.
Muldoon.
Mayor, if we're gonna look at doing this list up so like that, I think maybe another year, what we should look at, is been done in the past, is maybe have something locally for some of our own volunteers within town.
Like a celebration,
Yeah.
a gathering?
Yeah.
Yeah,
You know, so that we can show, we keep saying that we appreciate our volunteers, well,
yeah,
why don't we show it?
agreed, long overdue.
The last one was the one that Paul Seltzer organized at the Mahone Bay Center. That was several years before COVID.
Yes, yes.
So it's something that we might want to get back into, I think.
If we had an auspicious event upcoming, I know we're gonna have the fire hall opening, but
Back in the before times, we used to sort of see how things went depending on who the volunteer was. There was Councilor Carter referenced Paul Seltzer. There was something at the Mahone Bay Center because at the time he was very involved with the Mahone Bay Center. A few years back, Chris Weil from the fire department
Yes.
won the award, and he was recognized at the fire department banquet that year. So
Yes,
that
I
has been
remember that
something
one.
that we've been, over the last couple of years, we've just sort of put something out there on social media because everything
Yeah.
was different, but
I think, if we had something that any volunteers could come and attend, wouldn't have to be elaborate, but it's something that they come and be shown appreciation.
Yeah.
On my part.
Summertime, that barbecue picnic thing on the
Well, that was
at the
good.
playground, that was,
Yeah, that
that
was
went
good.
well, we had
That was very well
entertainment.
attended.
That'd be a good time to do it.
We'll invite all volunteers, and Kara Muldoon would be recognized as the representative one.
Yeah.
And everybody included.
Yep.
So it's come a long way from publishing some names in the newsletter. Does council want to direct staff in some capacity here? Are we
Yeah.
reporting back on the potential for a volunteer recognition? Or
Is the province doing their recognition dinner
yes.
thing with the lieutenant governor, or
I was going to
they
say
didn't
yes,
for
but now
COVID
I'm,
for a couple of years?
I am not 100% sure where we landed on it, because it's such a flurry this year. What I was gonna say though is that we, I think before we plan an event with Ms. Muldoon as the centerpiece, I think one thing we've learned over the years is that we have to see how that particular volunteer
Yes,
feels about something like that,
but if she is not comfortable with it, or she's gonna be away,
or unavailable, or.
I think we still have enough other volunteers that collectively we can say thank you and give citizens an opportunity to do that as well.
I think that's why I was suggesting just keep it as direct staff to look at the potential for a volunteer recognition event. It doesn't have to specify this
So
year's.
moved.
Oh, do we have a seconder? Counselor now, moved and seconded. Have a volunteer recognition event.
To direct staff to investigate.
Well, investigate the potential for is probably the best place to start.
Yeah.
Maureen had her hand up. So maybe
I was
she
gonna say
already
as soon as
had
Maureen
a
can
thought,
get to
but,
it.
And we recognized that there was a list of 56 things that were already on their to-do list. So.
I was just gonna say, I received a message that the volunteer awards this year are in September with the province.
Yes, but they're not saying where. Are they gonna be a formal event in HRM in September?
I will see if my message becomes more clear in a moment. from
Okay,
reviewing
all right.
the highlight.
Anyway, in the meantime, we have a motion on the floor to move and seconded to direct staff to investigate the potential for a volunteer event. Okay,
Recognition event.
yes, all in favor? Motion's carried. Let's go to 7.2 is a request for a leave of absence. One of our members has requested a leave of absence. I think the initial request was for a month, but I think it would be difficult at this point to say that it'll be a month. I would suggest that we might want to consider 2 months, and if her situation changes and she wants to come back early, she can.
I would so move that.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Carver. On the question, all in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you. And whatever her personal reason is, we wish her the best of luck in accommodating it. Application for Founders Society representative on the Heritage Advisory Committee. The hunt has been underway for some time. Councillor,
I would like to move that Brian Pulverman be appointed to the Heritage Advisory Committee as a representative for the Founders Society.
seconded, and I only do that to Councillor Fee because he's part of the Heritage Advisory Committee as well. You've heard the motion. On the question, all in favor? Motion's carried. Okay, thank you. Let's go to committee reports, the Policy and Strategy Committee, the draft minutes from the meeting of April the 25th, and there are 3 motions in that. Buried in there.
Mayor, I'll kick it off. Mayor, I'd move that council add the following strategic action item to the town's 2021 to 2025 strategic plan, and that's section 2.1, to develop and implement policies that will enhance and protect the town's built heritage and historic atmosphere.
Okay, seconded by Councillor Carver. On the question? All in favor? Motion's carried. What's the next motion? It was moved by Councillor Burdick. Deputy Mayor.
I'd like to move that council directs staff to provide a report on the next steps to develop a housing plan for Mahone Bay.
Okay. Seconded, Councillor Feeney. On the question. All in favor? Motion's carried. And finally, third motion.
Mayor, move that council direct staff to provide a report on the next steps to develop a housing plan for Mahone Bay.
I'm sorry, Councillor Feeney, that's one we just voted on.
Oh, man.
This is the one about setting.
Now that I'm putting my glasses on, obviously. Thank you, Deputy Mayor, for that previous motion. I agree with entirely. Enough to make it again. I'd move that council set an agenda for the May 30th, for the May 30th, 2022 meeting of the Policy and Strategy Committee to include the low income property tax exemption and the HR management and policy development.
Okay. Seconded by Councillor Carver. You've heard the motion. On the question. All in favor? Councillor Carver, I know we've had the motion, but you look perplexed on that one. No,
No comment.
okay. Good enough. Let's go to 8.2, the Police Advisory Board. And there is the report, the police report is in there. And we also have one motion. Council prioritized the discussion of the draft video surveillance policy by the Policy and Strategy Committee. And the committee made that motion because of the increasing incidence of graffiti in the town.
Mayor, I'm losing the cadence of, is that motion out of a recent meeting? The
Yes.
recent
The
meeting.
last PAB that we had was a lengthy discussion on graffiti in the town and damage, physical damage to the playground, to the ball field dugouts,
Mhm.
and a need for some means to identify who the perpetrators might be.
Don't we haven't we just had a recent discussion about
Yeah.
video surveillance policy
Yeah.
and provided a policy?
No, we.
I don't think we chose not to, I believe.
We chose not to have policy.
Yeah. Bert?
A draft policy was presented to council, which was then referred to the Policy and Strategy Committee. And the discussion, the notion of a video surveillance policy first came from the Police Advisory Board.
It did, yeah.
And that meeting meets quarterly. So the
Mhm.
discussion of the Police Advisory Board came about as part of the follow-up, as this is what happened last time. Where are we with that now?
And the incidence of destruction
Yes,
has put it, it's now a priority for the PAB that it be addressed, that whoever is going to make the final determination, make it. Deputy Mayor.
So I disagree with how that's being presented. I think we discussed it. A draft was brought to the table. We took it back to policy and strategy and agreed that we're not going forward with a video surveillance policy. It's come to the table a few times.
It was turned away.
Yeah, and we turned it
My-
away.
Yes, it was turned away.
I think it was just referred to policy and strategy. Have we ever discussed it at policy and strategy?
Yeah,
Yeah.
we talked to about
Wasn't
45-minute
that-
conversation about it.
Let me double check those agendas. I didn't recall that.
They decided, they discussed,
It started when I was a PAB. It came to policy and strategy. We talked about it, and then a draft was put together. It came to council, I think, for the first reading before we approve it, and then we decided, no, we're not going to move forward with it.
right.
But was it ever discussed at policy and strategy?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I think what happened, Councillor Carter, was that the situation on the ground out there in town, considerable amount of damage to town property at the playground and on the ball field, that the police and the PAB in frustration have asked that it be prioritized.
They want council to revisit the decision.
Now, if council is saying, no, we're not going to revisit it,
Well, if there's new information, I think council's probably open-minded to hearing about it, but
I think the
I-
new information is the amount of destruction that is reportedly, because I've never seen it,
I mean,
but
it's,
is reportedly going on. Clerk?
Yes, at the discussion happened at council, at which time a draft policy was presented and discussed, because policies come to one council meeting and cannot be considered for passage at that meeting, they have to go back to the next
Yeah.
meeting. When it came back to the next meeting, it was referred to the Policy and Strategy Committee, and that only made it to, it was referred for the April 25th meeting of the Policy and Strategy Committee, at which time it was just added to the list of things, but not given a, not put on a specific agenda. So actually, I was wrong, it has not been discussed at Policy and Strategy at all, only at council.
I still disagree. We discussed it and we made a decision. But anyways, if you want to bring it back, let's bring it back. I will not be supporting it. And I think what we talked about was that there are other measures that we can put out there to discourage graffiti that we haven't done. The whole notion of using surveillance for graffiti, like I said before, is using a tool that's not necessarily in the breadth of the issue. And so if there's new information that probably we need to think about, yeah, let's talk about it. But I think we 3 meetings in total we talked about. If I recollect correctly, we talked about it 3 times in different ways. So
I think we've gone beyond just graffiti. I've seen firsthand the damage at the Tiny Tots playground. The one slide had a big hole punched through it and it was almost like it was cutting, and there's been damage there. So I've seen that. And so it's become more than just graffiti.
And there was damage to the dugouts,
I didn't see
at
that.
the ball field. And this is what was reported at the meeting, so. Mr. Hyde.
Further to the reports, there's also a lot of vandalism and damage to the pool, which took place.
Oh.
Public Works has addressed some of it. We'll address the rest before opening. And just to, further Maureen's remembrance, yeah, absolutely. The 24th of March was the council meeting when this was referred to policy and strategy, which means that we haven't had a discussion at policy and strategy. So when Deputy Mayor referenced that there were other things that could be done, I actually think that was what was intended to be discussed further, was if we're not moving forward with the policy, what are the other things? And I do believe that discussion had yet to happen.
Okay,
And actually, I went back and I looked at the agendas, which is where I got my, my information from. Just, it wasn't on everything.
Right.
well,
Well, I mean, I could comment on it. He's saying the same thing over and over again. I find it very frustrating because I think the biggest problem we have with regard to this kind of behavior is really inadequate community policing. People don't get out of their the only time they get out of their cars is to go for a cup of coffee. And I mean, I don't ever remember seeing a constable walking the streets of Mahone Bay, with the rare exception of summer festivals, which have been out for years. So they don't know the community, they don't know the kids. And I guarantee you, if they knew some of the youngsters that were roaming the streets at 10 o'clock at night, they'd find out in half an hour who was doing this, and they would solve it. They just don't know.
Okay. So, the motion that the PAB had sent us,
So it doesn't have to be made here, however, the council members
Well, I mean,
who are on the PAB might want to make the motion.
like, this is a policy, this is a purported policy with, like, I'm not seeing any advocacy for it. So if somebody wants it, is willing to come speak to it, I'm certainly willing to listen to the arguments
Okay.
and the actual plan. Like, oh, what do you want? What do you want to, how long do you want it for? What are the parameters? But, I mean, is it, when we say the police advisory board, who is that? Like, I know who it is, like the committee members, but is there a report from that group that's been, there's a plurality of people that voted upon that, and there's a proposal that they want to provide to council?
the only issue from the PAB, because the item is still in council's territory, is that the draft video surveillance policy be given some priority. Because the problem is continuing, the problem appears to be growing, the problem is getting expensive. And from their perspective, they've asked council to consider the video surveillance policy. So we don't have to put any priority to it. It's kind of in the middle, and it'll keep on going.
And I honestly thought we had debated this and decided, but if we want to revisit it.
Well, this is new information from before, but Deputy Mayor, you had a comment?
So, so for me, the policy has been, not the video surveillance has been suggested as the solution to addressing the vandalism and graffiti. From my perspective, without, I guess, consideration of what that in its entirety means for a community when you're starting to use video surveillance into a community. I mean, the places that are surveilled, and that's fine, but we're a small enough community that I don't think we need to get to that stage of doing things. So maybe what we need to prioritize as a conversation is how do we deal with this problem of vandalism and graffiti, rather than just say video surveillance. I would much rather entertain that conversation than saying, well, that's the solution. That's I guess, a silver bullet to solving this problem. So maybe taking it back to PAB, or maybe having another motion that talks about that particular issue, rather than just video surveillance.
Would it be possible to have the staff sergeant, and maybe one of his members, come and talk to council about what is happening, what they see as a solution, how would the video surveillance even work? That type of thing. How would it be handled? Or is it something that?
Where has it been used in other locations?
Yes, yeah. So that we get some insight into this.
Deputy or CAO?
Just to the deputy mayor's suggestion. So, the motion here that council prioritize also in order would be a motion that, as per we just had one, so it's unfortunate the timing of the two sets of reports, but the council set the agenda for set a date, policy and strategy committee meeting to include, and then deputy mayor, you can call this item whatever you want. So the item can be to include discussion of vandalism in Mahone Bay. That's an item. It doesn't have to be restricted to the title being proposed here. So that might be a motion that would be in order now. I think the bigger question would be, we just set the agenda for May 30th. Is there a desire to amend that to include this, or to set the next one to include this, I guess would be the. If council wishes to respect the recommendation to prioritize the discussion.
So what I was gonna say was that, I've certainly, everything I've ever heard dealing with the RCMP, that they're happy to come in and talk to council and very eager to talk to council about what is of interest. And I know our community liaison is actually always saying that, you know, what is happening in Mahone Bay, what are people talking about? I'm sure we could set something up. But also just to make a slight clarification is that this motion came from community members on the PAB, not from the RCMP. So I don't know that they could speak. Oh, I wouldn't say they could speak to this idea. That didn't come from them.
Yeah, it's a council committee recommending council prioritize the discussion. It's not the.
But they could give us some insight into how the surveillance would work. I'm sure they use it in other places, so.
They might be able to comment on how surveillance could provide them with additional information.
Yeah.
You know, ultimately how it would work is the town's, obviously it's their discretion.
And we'd also have an opportunity to discuss Councillor Wilson's motion that we need more officers on the ground intermingling with the community, with the kids in particular. Councillor Kerber.
I think Councillor Wilson had his hand up.
Yes, I was just going to remark that one of the things that we must remember is that should the RCMP have a reason, they can put video surveillance up in town
Of their
anytime
own,
they like.
yeah.
What they're doing is asking us to do it, and one of the things that really bothered me about our proposed policy was almost the last line, which had said basically that the CAO could put up cameras wherever he deemed it appropriate. And that seems to me like, no, that's just not it. I'm not, all due respect to government. I don't think it's a great idea to have one person deciding the cameras.
And he's accountable to this group of 7 for any decisions he makes.
Yeah, ultimately, but. Anyway.
Okay. Councillor Carver and then Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. I would be definitely in favor of inviting a representative of the RCMP to come and talk with us about this topic or about any topic that the RCMP would like to talk with us about, because we don't see them anymore. We used to see them regularly.
Yeah.
Because they reported directly to council, but now they work with the police advisory board. So that would be a great opportunity to get to know Staff Sergeant Whalen better and the community policing officer as well. So I would be certainly in favor of having asked them to come and talk with us about this topic and any other topic they would like or that we would like. And I also would be in favor of, because it sounds like there's some sense of urgency. No, I'll stop there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Deputy Mayor.
And so I understand the sense of urgency, but I would be ready to, I guess, float a motion that council set the agenda for June. I can't remember the date.
Well,
27th, I think.
Clerk, who was the mover and seconder of the motion around the, we don't have one yet.
No, we don't have
No,
one.
okay.
It was a move.
A motion to go to,
June to set the June 24th agenda for policy and strategy for one of the items to be to discuss the acts of vandalism and graffiti and how to resolve that.
would you see us inviting the RCMP to come speak at that meeting?
Yes.
Okay.
The disadvantage is it's not visible to the public. At a committee meeting, if they came to council, they would be, the discussion would be public.
That would only be a presentation.
Hmm?
It will only be a presentation, not a discussion with them. Because I'm thinking we want solutions, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And I had been thinking along the same lines of getting it on the agenda, but thinking it's sequentially having a presentation or conversation with the RCMP prior to it going to.
But for policy and strategy,
If we could engineer that, that would be helpful.
okay. Mr. Hyde,
Two things. I think you were making a motion, Deputy Mayor, but I don't know that it was seconded. Are we in discussion on the motion?
we got down to Councillor Carter. I thought you were
Yeah, I
on the second.
seconded it. I seconded it.
Okay.
Okay, and then, so I guess in
On
discussion
discussion.
in discussion on the motion, I just wanted to clarify, the policy and strategy committee meetings are open to the public to attend. So people, even operating this way, people can attend by joining the Zoom, and the link is posted, it's available through Maureen for anybody who wants to join, so it's not as if people who are listening now and want to be part of that meeting wouldn't be able to attend. They would.
Oh, like they did during their strategy and.
Yeah, the last.
Strategic plan discussion, correct, that's right, yes.
All right.
So may I ask for clarification, was that, there was nothing in the, I don't believe there was anything in the motion to invite the RCMP to that meeting. But I just want to clarify, because then there was some discussion about maybe have a meeting with the RCMP prior to, or I'm just not sure, does that motion include inviting the RCMP to that?
Yes, I said yes.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Perhaps, clerk, for the benefit of those at home, you would read the motion that the deputy mayor and Councillor Carver have now moved and seconded.
That one of the items for the June 27, 2022 meeting of the Policy and Strategy Committee be the issue of vandalism and graffiti in the home bay, and that the RCMP be invited to join that meeting.
Thank you. You've heard the motion on the question. All in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you. Okay.
And we'll still, since we have a nice new calendar, that'll still be before PAB meets again, so.
Yeah. Okay. That's it for our agenda. Let's go to the people at home to see if anyone, we still have people watching, clerk?
We do. We still have people watching, but we have no questions in the gallery.
No questions. Now that means either that we answered them all already, or we haven't touched the right buttons to generate the questions. Well, on that note then, we will entertain a motion to go in camera.
I would move that we go in camera to discuss acquisition, sale, lease, and security of municipal property and litigation.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Wilson. All in favor? We will be in camera. Thank you very much to the people at home who joined us. I hope you've heard a few things of interest this evening. Call one of your councillors or call me or call staff at the town hall and talk to them about those things. And with that,